Hi, I'm Nolan Baker from the Retirement Guys, and today I'm joined by Tyler from our portfolio management team. One of the things that we really enjoy doing is what is called our investment committee meetings. So we have a formalized process where we get together and we talk about the portfolios and the different strategies that we manage. Today in our great debate, you get an opportunity to kind of hear some of the things that are common questions that many investors, in fact us, commonly talk about. So Tyler, let's jump right into it. I think one of the questions that we have right now is we've heard the concept of Make America Great. You know, for the last several years, there's been a big focus on US-based companies and investing here domestically in United States equity type companies. And for the most part, the last several years, although we've experienced a lot of volatility, have generally been going up. So the question that I would have, starting out for our great debate, is what would you say if I asked you the question, international investing versus U.S. investing?
Well, that's a great question, Nolan, and I'm glad to be here. I really think that's a question for 20 years ago, 50 years ago. I think now that question has gotten much easier to answer because you look at a company like Apple, you look at a company like Coca-Cola. These are nominally U.S. companies, but they're doing business overseas, significant amount of business overseas. Apple's, very big specifically in China as well. So I think to call them even U.S. companies is really a misnomer. And on the flip side, when I think of international companies, I think of a Nestle, I think of Anheuser-Busch InBev, which is technically a Belgian company, and they're one of the biggest alcohol companies in the world. So to me, I don't really think the distinction matters as much anymore. I think what matters is that you're picking the right companies for those models.
I would agree. So, when we think about the term diversification, as he mentioned, 20 years ago, we thought investing in the U.S. and international is a way to diversify. And, for number nerds like us, there's technical ways that we can look at the correlation of portfolios. We believe, quite frankly, that diversification means having some investments that do work a little bit different, that are still differently correlated, maybe don't all work the same way or don't have the same type of outcomes. If you've ever been in the office, you've seen kind of the approach that I draw on the whiteboard, which is called the independent income system. So Tyler, for question number 2, when we're talking maybe about diversification, let's use an example of how it is in our context here at the Retirement Guys and maybe ideas that we use it. So a common question that we hear from investors is, should I invest in an annuity or the stock market? What would you say about that?
Well, I'd say that's a great question, and I think for every investor that answer differs. One of the major things is it depends on their risk tolerance. But I think especially for people with a shorter time horizon and a lower risk tolerance, an annuity is a very good option because can't afford to take any hits in the market, really just want to make the gains that they can on their annuity while they have the chance. So I think for those investors, an annuity is a good option. Whereas for maybe the younger investors who have 20 years to be able to make up those gains, I think the market is a good solution. Also, it's also an option for some people to have a mixture. So there's nothing wrong with having 30% of your overall portfolio in a fixed annuity and 70% in the stock market, or vice versa. It all depends on each investor's personal situation.
So there again, as he talks about, there's no real Swiss Army knife when it comes to investing. Everybody's situation is somewhat unique. Even the fact of annuities, as he's talking about, there's many different types of annuities. There's some that are risky, and there's some that are safer and provide protection against market loss. So as always, insurance products like annuities are based upon the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. And before you make any important financial decision, you always want to take a look at all of the material information to make a good educated decision about what's right for you. So Tyler, I guess kind of wrapping up our debate series that we're talking about today, one of the things let's talk about is the big news, right? The election. What are your thoughts on the upcoming election?
Yeah, I think it's definitely been interesting so far, and I think all this stuff relating to the coronavirus hasn't, hurt that. I think a lot of the supposed election damage that might be coming is a little bit overblown, because I think you have to look at Joe Biden and Donald Trump. The last 4 years for Donald Trump, up until the coronavirus, were unprecedented economic times. So if he wins, I don't think there's going to be a disaster in the market. I think probably that's what the market would want to see. But on the other side, you also do have to look at Joe Biden. You have to look at the 8 years of Barack Obama. They were an economic calamity. What I like to say is Joe Biden's not Bernie Sanders. And yes, there are some campaign trail promises and things set on the campaign trail, but we generally find that when it actually comes to bear, that a lot of that is just going to get thrown away. And Joe Biden has shown throughout his 30 years in the Senate that he generally likes to govern as a moderate. So I think either way, I don't think we should be too worried about an economic disaster as a result of the election.
And so probably one of the best key advice that we can give you today is don't get stuck with the mentality thinking this time it's different. We often hear this time it's different. But again, if you've looked back at history and every time you've made a herd mentality decision about this time it's different, the stock market tends to be very painful in those situations. One of the things I'd encourage you to do is if you're not familiar with what your underlying investments and holdings are, there probably are different types of strategies that are more appropriate depending upon how election outcomes happen, depending upon what the coronavirus looks like. I would encourage you to take a look at some of the strategies that we have. We can highlight things like the consumer staples that we like, some of the strong stocks that are capitally well positioned, have low debt, and really just analyze your overall portfolio. Make sure that we get you in a position to be able to feel strong and confident to get through the rest of this year and not only survive, but thrive post-coronavirus and the elections. Again, I'm Nolan Baker, and this is Tyler with the Retirement Guys. We're so glad that you joined us today in our great debate.